I'm Don Moore from the Two Dimension Podcast, and I'm here to talk about 5 comic books you can't live without. Number 5, Lone Wolf and Cub, number 3. They brought the Japanese comic from the 70s, Lone Wolf and Cub, in the late 80s in the United States. I read the first 2 issues out of curiosity. It wasn't really doing it for me. I'm not huge on vengeance tales, which this is what it was. I picked up the 3rd one thinking this would be my last. It tells the story in a time is completely different. It starts out with the assassin in an abandoned shelter, and wolves come in late at night. He's trying to meditate. He ends up pulling the sword and killing the wolves. Basically, there's a religious leader from the Buddhist that is going there telling the town officials they can't tax the peasants. They're starving. They have to tax the peasants to keep the government going. They ended up hiring this assassin to kill this living Buddha. When he tries to do it, he can't. And what I found strange was they were sitting in a lotus position facing each other, and the living Buddha is teaching the assassin that basically you have a face of death. If he matched him with the face of death, he could have, but he just saw nothingness. If he would have tried to strike, he would have struck himself and died. Strange things to think about. Anyway, he teaches him what to do. He starts meditating. He becomes one. He goes back to the shack. The wolves come. They just walk through. He's transparent. He's nothingness. Finally, at the very end, he goes and attacks the Buddha, slices him in half, and the Buddha says, "Magnificent. Your nothingness is beautiful." The name of the story is The Gateless Barrier. That wrapped my head right through it. I think it's one of the greatest stories, and Lone Wolf and Cub became one of my favorite series because of this issue. Number 4, Valerian, Ambassador of the Shadows, was the first one I picked up in 1981 when it started translating the French comic into English. I picked it up because I like space comics, and this is full of it. It's about a young couple. They're space temporal agents. They're also involved with each other. The book I found, the artwork was just absolutely staggering. It was nothing like anything I'd ever seen, but they cover everything. They cover politics. They cover philosophy. It was almost like reading, in some ways, a Carlos Castaneda book. They covered religion, belief system, covered with aliens. Basically, they go to a place called Point Central, which is all the different civilizations have put part of a space station together. Reading it, half the time I thought they were on other planets. Valerian, the main character, appears at the beginning and is taken away. The rest of the story is about Laura Lean, his partner. I was really shocked in 81 reading this, what a strong character she was. American comics, female characters are always eye candy or weak. She was absolutely a woman, very feminine, but like my wife, she knew what to do. She took care of things. She wasn't overbearing. I couldn't believe all the alien races and all the alien concepts that were appearing in it and how the thing unfolded. The book has stayed fantastic all the way through, but this has always remained my first one. There was a Valerian movie that was released a few years ago. It's quite good. Most of it was based off this comic, but it pales compared to the comic book. So if you're going to try something, Ambassador of the Shadows is the one to pick up. Number 3 is Love and Rockets by Gilbert Hernandez. And it's Heartbreak Soup, the first story he did. It's about a small barrio called Palomar, somewhere in South America. He never actually says. The first story starts out with basically domestic abuse, and this character called Tippin', an old man that's broken. A young girl and her family, basically Carmen, takes him in. Carmen's a small girl. You're following this story. At the same time, there's another young man that just came to the barrio, just started school, named Heraclio. You're following his story. There's also another woman, very mysterious, named Luba, who was like a revolutionary. You're kind of figuring out as the story goes on. There's a corrupt sheriff, all kinds of townspeople, all ages, and everything intertwines. It gets surreal sometimes. At one point, a couple of the older boys are standing there by a tree, watching a tree. Heraclio comes by, and I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm waiting for somebody." All of a sudden, there's a guy under the tree. And he's, "Well, you can see him. Go ahead and wave at him." So the boy does. The guys leave. And later on, he finds out that the guy was gone under the tree. He was dead. He'd been dead a long time, and Heraclio can see him. the story just continues to go on. I really enjoyed the fact that it was all different generations, even though it was a small town. The cast is vast, and everybody works together. Again, it gets to be metaphysical at times. When it ties up, I found it staggering, and it was in a single issue black and white comic book with several other stories by the other brother and also by Gilbert himself. The strip has continued on with many others. Highly recommended, but Heartbreak Soup, the first one, is absolutely the one you should read. Number 2, The Man by Bodie. A lot of people know Bodie from National Lampoon magazine in the United States. He's famous for Cheech Wizard, another character called Cobalt 40. But my absolute favorite is a comic he did, I'm told, when he was in college, called The Man. It's about a caveman. Very simply drawn. I picked it up because I liked his work. Reading this 20-page comic just absolutely pulled me in. It's basically a caveman that has a little spear he calls stick. Has a burnt end, burnt, sharpened end. Has one little tiny branch, a twig, with one leaf on it. He talks to Stick like it's his companion. He always says things like, Stick, today we're going to go out and watch something die and then leave. He's always searching for food. He uses Stick to get it. At one point, he finds a small lizard. He names him Erg and decides to keep him. He ties a vine around his neck as a leash. He's always talking to Stick about Erg, says, I like him. At one point, before he finds the lizard, there's something in the tar pit, and he's just going to watch him die, but decides to help him. So he hands Stick over to him. The thing bites it with his beak, breaks the end of the stick, and then the man pulls the stick away, whacks the thing in the head, really upset that he hurt his friend, and lets the thing die. That's the relationship he's got. Anyway, he talks about other things. At one point, he's looking at the stars at night, talking to Stick with the lizard and saying sometimes he sees the stars. He basically is talking about how he feels small and his head hurts because he can't quite, like myself, put the thoughts into what he's saying. I was completely pulled into this world. And finally, at one point, him and Stick go off to hunt. The lizard makes too much noise, so he ties him up at where he stays at. It shows another caveman walk by, see him. And then later when the man comes back, it shows that other man squatting down with a fire, eating Erg. He gets upset, throws the spear at him, the guy dies. And then he's just dealing with the fact that he's lost this small lizard. The thing ends with him up on a mountaintop screaming about he doesn't really understand what the pain is and this and that. And he throws Stick away. And he says, I am alone. It was staggering. What amazed me was when I read it, he was alone the whole time. He built his whole environment up, which is what I liked. It's kind of what we do in life. I pass this comic off to everybody. Everybody reads it. They all come with different things, but it's basically, here's a man that had his own family, that he made, and then he doesn't. Absolutely something to read. Number 1, The Inkle by Alejandro Jodorowsky and Mobius, my favorite artist. I picked this up in 1981, and everything I ever wanted to see in a comic book was in this. It's an epic piece. It's long. In France, it came out in 6 volumes. In the United States, it's come out as 3 volumes, and also now you can pick it up in one massive phone book size, hardback. It starts off in a completely alien world. It's a city in a shaft underground. And it starts out with a B-class detective called John DeFool. And he's surrounded by 3 guys. They're covered. You can't even see what they are, but they're attacking him, demanding he give them something. Then they pick him up and throw him over his balcony. The whole city goes down a shaft. So it's this whole corridor. He's fallen down to an acid lake. The police pick him up, which is a bunch of robots. They interview him. And then he leaves. Come to find out what the 3 armored guys were doing was trying to get something he had. Later on, you find out he did have it. He had it hidden. But it was a crystal called the Inkle. He doesn't know what it is. John DeFool he's lazy. He's shifty. You can't quite trust him. And he doesn't really seem to have too much ambition except for what's going on right in front of him. As the story goes on, he starts finding out a little bit more about the Inkle. Everybody's seeking it. It makes everything better. It's basically a source of wisdom, but it improves anyone that it's around. Again, he's short-sighted. They send basically the greatest warrior they know, which is the Meta Baron, comes after him. You have the Technopope, which is basically a religious sect that worships technology. You have politics enter it, religion enters it. The thing goes on. It's kind of hard to describe because a lot of the action takes place in the city shaft, but it also takes place as the story continues. They go to other worlds. They go to a world that's just covered in nothing but water. More characters keep coming in. They're in the underground. They go with singing crystals. There's holy men. A lot of Buddhist thinking in it. At times, John DeFoe is picked up by the Inkle, and I'm thinking, wow, he's completely, Mobius even kind of draws him differently. He's really come around. He's really changed. And then he goes right back to what he was, which is what most of us do. I was really surprised to have the thing ended. I'm not going to give that away, but it's kind of a cycle. I really enjoy the fact that it's the same two creators all the way through, which is rare. It is the finest comic work I've ever seen. And it's published to this day, not hard to get. My highest recommendation for any book.